a few things about our environment today. Audio is available by phone, and if you lose internet connectivity, please reconnect with us that way. If you're joining us via Teams, keep your phone and device muted unless you're called upon. When you're called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking the microphone icon located in your meeting command bar. The moderator cannot unmute you, and if you're calling in by phone, press *6 to unmute. Commissioners, I'd ask you'd raise your hands if you wish to be recognized to speak, and otherwise, I'd like for the commissioners to have their videos on, and everyone else, unless you're speaking actively, please keep your video off. Public speakers, you'll be called upon early on in the meeting, and we'll have 3 minutes for you to speak. A timer will be displayed on the screen by staff, and if you're dialing in by phone, we'll provide an audible warning when 30 seconds are remaining. Remember, the meeting chat is only active for presenters or commissioners and shouldn't be used for discussion. This is a public meeting, so all information associated with the meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I believe our first agenda item is public comment. So I think we have a speaker who's here with us today, and if you please begin at your convenience, then we'll get started.
We actually have two speakers. Chaz Berry is first, and then we have Jay Bozos next.
Okay, and actually, I neglected to do a roll call, which I see some of the commissioners smiling about. I apologize. I am under the weather today, so if you hear it in my voice or in my attention, just please forgive me. Let's just go down the list real quick. Let me know if you're here. Bisma Ahmed.
Here.
All right, Nicole Merlene. All right, I don't see her in the attendees right now, so we'll move on for the moment. Kristen Clegg.
Excused, absent.
All right. Emily Camardo, I see you.
Hi.
Welcome. Aaron Almanza, are you here?
No, Aaron is absent tonight.
Okay. And Kirit Mukherjee?
Yes. Hello.
Hey, Kirit. Julio Basurto, are you here?
I am here.
Great. And Christopher Wimbush?
I'm here.
Good to see you. Ryan Whitaker?
I'm here.
And Matt Royer?
Here.
Fantastic. Okay. Roller, was there an order that you had the speakers in?
Yes, please. Chaz, you can go ahead.
All right. You have 3 minutes.
Hey, how's everybody doing? My name's Chaz Berry. I'm a current resident at Woodbury Park Apartments in Courthouse. My problem is that for about a month and a half now, and on several occasions, my apartment has filled with cigarette smoke as I sleep, which has led me to unknowingly inhale it during the night. I've given notice to my property team. General warnings have been sent out, but no evictions of perpetrators. My presented solution is I would like to be released from my lease without penalty. What I would like TLC to do is I would like them to get in direct communication with Drucker and Salk and reminding them that as a renter in a lease on their property that has a no smoking policy, they're responsible for ensuring that my well-being is not being perpetually threatened as a result of their inability to enforce this no smoking policy. And if they can't guarantee that, then I feel I should be released from my lease without penalty. And that's kind of what I wanted to share with you all today, because I don't think it's fair that, again, I should have to pay for a property or pay for a rental where my safety is not guaranteed, and I should not have to pay a penalty for being released from a lease that I did not violate. And that's the end of my presentation there.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. I think we'll have probably a few questions for you, and then I imagine some commissioners, including myself, will have some comments as well. My first question is really easy. It's basic. I'm curious how you found out about us and what prompted you to come here today.
Yeah, so actually, I have a friend that works for the county, and she's tended to be pretty resourceful with. I mean, honestly, that's how I got involved in the affordable housing program. I am in a affordable housing dwelling unit right now at Woodbury. So I am in that program, and it's partly due to that friend. So yeah, through that friend.
Okay, great. And how long has the issue been persisting for you?
About a month and a half now.
Okay, and you've made your request to be released from the lease to Drucker and Salk, and they've denied that request?
So I've left them. I've called them twice. So I spoke to my property team here. I've called Drucker and Salk twice over the past 3 weeks. I haven't received any response yet from them, and that's the problem because how long am I supposed to wait? Before something's done. And I've also sent an email as well, making my request known that I'd like to be released from my lease.
Sure. Okay. Well, I think we have some landlords here today and potentially some advocates as well that will maybe have some good advice for you. So I'm going to toss it to Ryan Whitaker first. Ryan, you have your hand raised, so go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, David. So Chaz, I'm sorry you're going through this. We are a landlord in Arlington. And so this and all of our buildings are non-smoking, and this occasionally comes up for us too. And so I sympathize with your issue. If the building is supposed to be, a non-smoking building, then it should be. Unfortunately, controlling tenant behavior can be difficult, for a landlord. But certainly maybe a letter or something. David, I don't know what the TLC can do, but a letter or something encouraging them to respond more effectively to your complaint, I think is something that I think we should be able to do that. Do you have, and I don't ask that you play police, for your apartment building. I'm familiar with Woodbury Park, and it's essentially a 3-story garden style building. So there are really only a small handful of units from which the smoke could be coming. Do you have any idea, or have you been able to, provide any, kind of further indication as to, at least some of the units? Because the good news is that cigarette smoke lingers, right? And so even, if the manager does care about your complaint, and they should, they should be able to investigate it pretty easily and, and take the action that they need to per the lease. So that's my first question is, have you been able to give them more guidance on that?
No, I don't know who it is. Again, I do know I contacted our property team, and the only thing that was done, the first time was, I guess a notice, a generic notice put in everyone's door, including mine, saying, reminding everyone of, no smoking, policy. But again, I'm not sure. One, and I can, assure you that after that happened, or after they did that, yeah, there was still smoke, that would, I was still walking to my apartment, after smoke having cleared out, or me having cleared it out. I was still walking to my bathroom or walking to my apartment and smell the smoke, or wake up in the middle of the night and smell the smoke and realize that I've been breathing it in. So again, I'm not convinced and haven't been sold on their ability, again, to enforce, that policy. And I understand, yeah, it is difficult to control tenant behavior. Again, there's one or two options. Either I'm guaranteed a space, where another space on their property, where I won't be subjected to that. Or if that can't be done, because of timing or whatever, then again, I should be allowed to be released from my lease.
Yeah, so I certainly understand what you want to do. And my other suggestion would be, to put everything, you said you called them a couple of times. I would put everything you can in writing, because what you're really talking about is, you have certain obligations to your landlord under your lease, and the landlord has certain obligations to you as their tenant, right? And so if either one of you breaks that side of the bargain. And I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a landlord who's signed a lot of leases. If either one of you breaks that bargain, then you have the right to get out of the, to call a default on the other party and to break the agreement. And so it sounds like, and I don't know your lease obviously, but it sounds like the landlord's defaulting on their end of the lease. And if that's the case, then, you're going to need to follow up with them in writing. Unfortunately, any default is not easily remedied. A lot of times if they won't agree, it goes to some kind of legal action or whatever, which I don't think you're going to want to do. Certainly, I think a letter from the commission encouraging them to find a solution, I think would probably be helpful for you. And I'm going to suggest that we, look into something like that, David, if we can. I would definitely put whatever communication you have with your landlord about this in writing, so that you have, something to go on if it comes down to, arguing about your lease itself.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And we'll let a couple other commissioners give you their 2 cents, and then we'll wrap up. But at the end of the day, we'd love for you to contact us and send us all the information, and we'll see what next steps might be most appropriate. But first, I saw, Chris, you had your hand up. It looks like you took it down, so I'll go to Elder Basurto.
Hi, Chaz, Elder Buddha Basurto here. Again, just like Ryan was saying, sorry for your circumstances. I am familiar with this kind of issues at the property you're speaking of, and also at a different property. So I would also tell you that continue to keep everything in writing, any doctor note. But I think it's very dangerous, because I think you're in a non-smoking. Certainly, the Frederick next door is non-smoking, and I think Woodbury may be also non-smoking.
It is.
But I cannot, it is, right? Okay, so
Yes.
it's correct. It's only units from below, but given the secondhand smoke and all the issues that you can have in your health from this is something that needs to be dealt with. I suggest that you also contact Bugata. There's Bugata, and make a record of this.
BU.
And there's also Bugata.
And actually, to make it easy on you, Mr. Barry, if you contact Roldan Ed like you did for this meeting, we'll be able to give you those resources and additional resources.
Gotcha. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's correct. And then also there's an online form in the county website to keep a record of this, because I'm concerned, because we have the same issues at other apartments that are owned by AHC Inc. And so Drucker and Falk, even though it's a new property management team at Woodbury, it's the same employees from AHC Management who formerly ran that building. And so I'm hoping to see improvement on that, but I'm making a note about this issue because they should be able to handle this. I mean, there's only a few apartment buildings, and it's a matter of the smoke goes upward, right? So where you're located, so I wouldn't think it would be a stretch to ask for a place to move, to a different location, or give you some kind of lax on your lease. But anyway, I will keep an eye out on it, Chaz. And sorry you're going through this. Please keep all your records, and please contact those agencies.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
unless Ryan, you had something else to add, I would just wrap up by saying, yeah, please contact us with all of the information. We have a number of resources, including legal aid that can potentially help you. And Elder Basurto mentioned Bugata as well. There are a number of advocates that we are in contact with that can help sort this issue out. It sounds like it should be pretty cut and dry. If the issue persists, then of course we can talk further after you've made a formal demand of them in writing. Okay.
Yes. Now, my question is, how can I make a formal demand of them in writing? So far, the only way I see to contact, Drucker and Falk is through the phone number that they have listed on their site, and then also through their general customer service, email, I don't know, whatever, so I don't have an official.
We're
You're not
losing your
hearing us.
audio a little
Hey,
bit.
Chaz, I think you muted yourself.
We lost your audio there for the second half of what you said.
Okay.
But yeah,
You
I
can hear me now?
understand. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, we can hear you.
Gotcha.
Okay, Ryan, you were going to say something.
Yeah,
I think the
should
issue
be
is that he doesn't know where to send a letter.
Yeah, there should be a notice provision in your lease that tells you where to contact. If you're going to provide a formal, if you're basically telling the landlord that they're in default because they're not living up to their end of the bargain, then you need to send a letter to, explaining your situation to that address that gives that, the landlord notice address in the lease, and they'll have to respond to that. And, if they don't, you're going to have even greater case, if you have to take this to court to get out of your lease, because unfortunately, until, somebody lets you out of the lease, either the landlord or the court, you're stuck in the lease. So.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So a notice of provision, is that what you called it?
It's a notice provision in your lease. It's going to say where you can send a notice to the landlord if you need to contact them for whatever reason.
Gotcha.
Great. Okay. Yeah, again, send us that information and we'll do our best to help you and connect you with resources. Thank you very much for coming to the meeting. We're going to move to our next public
Thank you.
comments, and I believe that is Mr. Brazos. Is that how you say it?
Brozos.
Brazos. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Jay Brozos. I'm an attorney and member of the Virginia State Bar, currently retired. I'm not here in any legal capacity, but to present the matter of Tipsicon Yerkavaria, who's sitting right next to me. And for ease of all of us, she goes by Noy. Noy is a naturalized U.S. citizen from Thailand. She entered into a rental agreement June 2020, 2317 North Dinwiddie Street, Arlington. The landlord was Paul Kretchen. He has 3 separate rental properties on that street. It was a month-to-month lease, $650 security deposit she made. After a year, she gave 30 days timely notice. She texted Mr. Kretchen. He said, I'm on vacation. I'll get back to you when I come back. There have been numerous texts since that time. He's never responded. She then sent certified letters to his home and to his office. No response whatsoever. In January of 2022, this year, Noy went to small claims court. She again sent certified letters to him in his home, in his office. Because Mr. Kretchen lives in Potomac, Maryland, they require that process be served personally. She did that at an expense of $80 to herself. Despite all these efforts, he never showed up in court. She got a default judgment. The judge awarded her the $650 and $80 for her process. It's more than 11 months now since that happened, and not a peep from him. Noy, who's right here, is a cancer survivor. She works part-time at Inova Shar Hospital, reduced schedule, and she needs her money. The only options I see from a legal standpoint is filing a lien to his property, which the course is prohibitive. Noy's not the only one. There's another woman in the house, same thing, countless emails, no response, and it's well more than a year there as well. Her name is Aneb Manawi. Now, I enclosed an article from the Washington Post, April 16th, 2013. One of his properties just down the street from her burnt down completely. 2 of the tenants were hospitalized. He only rents to international women. The report indicates the multiple housing violations that were found in his properties. Now, I provided this article to show how potentially dangerous this situation can be when a landlord shows absolutely no respect for the rights of tenants. Tenants in this situation are all international women. They're very timid and don't know how to seek redress. We felt we had an obligation to bring this matter to your attention. Noy and I are here to answer any questions or to provide any documentation you may request. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for that presentation. It certainly sounds like a predatory issue based on the facts that you've presented. What exactly were you hoping for us to do? I'm not sure how familiar you are with the TLC's capabilities and powers, but what was, from your perspective?
Well, two things. First thing is to help facilitate payment of her security deposit. I think he has an obligation as a landlord in Arlington County to fulfill his obligations. Certainly that. The other women who've also been screwed with their security deposits also should get those back. Notice to him, he seems to disregard all court appearances, anything like that. That's the first thing. The second thing, quite frankly, is I'm concerned as a citizen. I saw what happened, or I read what happened in 2013. And I don't know what kind of monitoring has been going on at his 3 properties. I think the one that totally burnt down was rebuilt. I don't know if it's up to code. I just don't know. But I'm concerned simply because of the fact he has no regard for the rights of tenants. And that article, I know it's older, shows that, how many times he was cited for code violations. This is not my area of expertise by any stretch of the imagination. But I am very, very concerned that this guy does not have what it takes to be a landlord and meet the obligations of his people. A simple returning of an email would have sufficed, or a text, or responding to the court, any of that. But none of that has happened.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to a couple commissioners. I do think, at the end of the day, TLC, this is the sort of thing that TLC is interested in helping on to whatever extent it can. So as I said with the previous public commenter, I would love for everything that you've said in your presentation today, whatever documentation you have, to be sent to Rolled and Ed. I believe you have her email address already. Is that right?
I do.
Okay,
I'll be
perfect.
glad to do that.
Great. And then let's go to Chris first.
Hi there, and apologies, my internet crashed, and so I've been playing around trying to get everything up and running again. No, I mean, I think one of the important things that the Tenant-Landlord Commission can do is to elevate these types of issues to the county board and to county staff. And you're going to see that today in the discrimination subcommittee work that we've been doing. And so I also am happy to, when it comes to volunteering, both with our previous case and with in this situation, happy to on the commission's behalf, write letters to the county board or to the individuals at stake at issue on behalf of the board, raising the issues and questions and bringing, I think ultimately, what we can do is bring attention. In this particular case, it's obvious that this landlord has been able to act with impunity, even from the courts. And my guess is that that's, given what you told us, what he's counting on. So being able to, do everything we can, knowing that this person seems to be willing to act, without regard. I think this also leads to some questions around, what licensing is necessary in order to rent out an apartment in Arlington, and whether that's just a pro forma license or whether there are folks who should not be, whether it's a business license or an occupancy license, simply should not be allowed to be landlords when they abuse their tenants regularly. And so it's deeply concerning. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for asking for the necessary information in both cases, and I'm happy to volunteer to draft letters for the commission to review and edit on any of the issues that are raised today.
Great.
That would
Yeah,
be very
noted. Thanks,
helpful.
Chris. And Ryan, it looks like you've got your hand raised again as well, right?
Yeah, just a quick comment. First of all, I'm sorry this is happening to you, Noy. It's Noy, right? I think she goes by. Yeah, I'm sorry this is happening to you. You know, frankly, it puts, as a landlord of small properties, it kind of paints all landlords with a bad brush, and that's too bad. I've seen other landlords that take advantage of this, and it's of their tenants, and it's terrible. You know, we don't do that, and so it makes me mad when I do the right thing and others don't. Let me say a couple things that I thought of, and I did read the Post article that you forwarded to the commission earlier. The first is, it seems to me like some of the stuff are health and safety violations that could border on criminal. I almost wonder if the Commonwealth's attorney should be copied on any correspondence. And I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think Chris had a great point about, you know, licensing. You know, certificates of occupancy are required for multifamily dwellings. Rarely are they do apartment owners go get them. We have them on all of our buildings. You know, I think that's something that, you know, the building department should be alerted to. You know, and so I think between, you know, the Commonwealth's attorney and the building department, I think we've got, you know, the county has ways to look into and enforce this stuff, especially if, you know, the kind of things that were going on, like, you know, illegal units in basements and things like that are still going on. You know, I suspect that this isn't not returning security deposits is not the only thing this landlord may be doing. So, but I think those are things that maybe the commission can weigh in on with a letter once we have the right kind of documentation for further investigation by, you know, those two county departments.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Ryan. Kirit, you have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to say thanks for bringing this to our attention. I'm interested to hear the details. I don't know this individual as far as like exact number, you know, the properties he has and what number of units. And I just wanted to mention that based on what happened at the Serrano, there is a movement in the state, like as far as legislation, to pass laws which strengthen the rights of tenants when landlords are deficient, especially in terms of health and safety issues. And not all the bills that were sponsored this past year passed, but there's more going to come up each session because there's a growing acknowledgement that the laws favor landlords and allow them to get away with stuff that isn't right.
Okay, thanks, Kirit. Sir, you're clear on you know, the types of things that you should send to us for the next steps?
Yeah, yes, and we will continue to do whatever we can. We have tried, just so you know, we went to the Attorney General's office, who saw this as more of a consumer issue than a housing issue. So we were struggling, and they suggested you, and that's how we ended up before you.
Okay.
And
yeah,
whatever we can do to further that, you know, we would help in any way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and well, thank you both, Noy and Jay, for coming before us, and we'll look forward to documentation. Certainly, there are lots of ways that TLC can, you know, push on Arlington County to try and move this thing forward. We want tenants and you know, their relationships with landlords to be fair and equitable. And when someone's so clearly flouting the law and the court, it's deeply concerning to me personally. So, Alder Basurto, did you have a comment as well, or was that an old hand up?
No, I did have a comment. Well, actually, I had a question. One, do we know what the county has done to follow up on the violations? I believe they're supposed to be following up on all the violations that occurred there. And two, I don't know if I heard this right, but I think you said there was a pattern of doing this to other tenants that were there. And I'm wondering if this landlord receives or is there a receives with any county funding or anything like that, or state funding? And also, is there any nonprofit group involved in the situation yet?
I don't know about any funding, but there's no group, county group or any group that's involved in this situation.
Okay, and I would also agree with the statement about writing a letter. And then I don't know if there's something that we can do to follow up on the violations or see what's going on there. Because if it's happening to one, it's definitely happening to others. There's already a clear record of that. And there's definitely a movement for tenant rights here in Arlington, and it's catching fire everywhere in Virginia. So I didn't catch the property. Did you name the property? I'm sorry, I'm on the road.
Yes, I did. It's 2317 North Dinwiddie Street, Arlington, Virginia. And there are two other properties that he owns and rents out as well on Dinwiddie, North Dinwiddie.
North Dinwiddie. Okay, thank you very much. And the same goes for Chaz previously. David, I forgot to say I agree with writing a letter to support Chaz also. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, appreciate you coming, and we're going to move to our next agenda item, which is the approval of the November meeting minutes. Much less exciting and unfortunately has lower stakes. But
David, November minutes?
Excuse me, I'm reading off of a typo on the agenda here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Meeting minutes for April. I told you, I'm not 100% today, so
that's right.
bear with me.
Backing you up.
I know I'm usually perfect, so
can I make a motion to approve the minutes
at all? And anyway, were there any edits or comments to the April meeting minutes?
Can I make a motion to approve the minutes?
Was that an old hand?
That's an old hand.
Okay, great. And did I hear a motion to approve?
Yes, that was me.
All right, can I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. And any opposed? Hearing none, the April meeting minutes are approved, which will bring us to our first presentation by Kim Painter, who is the Chief of Staff for APA on the relocation plan for Arna Valley View. If you're speaking, Rolda, you're muted.
Sorry, I think we're reading off of a wrong agenda. Tonight's agenda has Washington Housing Conservancy, and so it's Kimberly Driggins, the Executive Director.
Thanid you.
Did I send a wrong agenda to everyone?
I think that's the case, but I should have noticed that was the case.
No, seriously though, did everyone get November?
This was one that I just emailed with you.
Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. Terribly sorry.
I apologize. Here we go.
It's okay.
Miss Driggins, are you still on with us?
I'm still here. I'm just not used to Teams. So I'm trying to figure out how to share my screen so I can share the presentation.
In the command bar, there's an open share tray.
Yeah, it's just not showing. It's not showing my presentation. So in that command tray.
Would you like to email it to us and we can get it up and you can get started in the meantime? You can email it to me.
No, I don't think I really have time for that. I will either just do the presentation because I'm tired. Sorry, it's been a long day. I haven't eaten. So I'm a little more than spent today. Let's see.
I think we can go without visual aids.
All right.
Okay with that.
I will do that.
And you just send it to the commission afterwards, if that's okay.
Yeah. After you get a bite tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be first, so I thought I was going to be done. Okay. Kimberly Driggins, I'm with the Washington Housing Conservancy. Honestly, I'm not exactly sure how we got connected, but I'm happy to be presenting in front of you. It's been, listening to the meeting thus far. The Washington Housing Conservancy, we're a not-for-profit organization. We're a 501c3 that preserves affordable housing, avoids displacement, promotes economic mobility for moderate to low income residents in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. We have a mission that really centers racial equity, and we think about the realities of structural and institutional racism that are endemic to the housing industry and achieving more equitable outcomes. We are highly intentional about developing our approach with a racial equity lens in every facet of our housing strategy. This includes where we work, addressing structural inequities and access to high opportunity neighborhoods. And I'll define what that is in a minute or two. Identifying and countering implicit bias in the property management and resident services arena. We have a very robust training program that really looks to change the resident property manager dynamic. In fact, we actually don't even say tenants. That is very transactional. So, we are very purposeful in our language, residents, and really thinking about how property managers can be of service to our residents, and not just who do you call when your sink is leaking, or where do I go to pay my rent. We move beyond the traditional property management lens, and I'll talk about how we do that. Promoting greater levels of voice and agency amongst our residents about community life, and creating a greater sense of belonging and connection across lines of difference. We have mixed income communities. They're very racially diverse as well. And we really promote an atmosphere where people can come together across racial and social economic lines amongst residents and staff. And there's an intentionality to community building. Our theory of change, we are more than just a housing play. We are our two North Stars. Our North Stars include promoting housing stability, which is the affordability, the rent affordability, and promoting economic mobility. We work in high opportunity neighborhoods, and those are neighborhoods that are defined as above average population growth, 50% or higher. These are neighborhoods that are already seeing a level of investment, and are stable neighborhoods, decent schools, or the test scores are on the rise. There's access to fresh and healthy food. There's strong civic support systems, inclusive quality infrastructure in terms of close to transit. I have a map of our high opportunity neighborhoods. We do it by census tract, but it covers the DMV. We operate regionally. The district in Maryland, it's Montgomery County and Prince George's County. And Virginia, it is the close-in suburbs to Washington, D.C. I think we go out as far as Loudoun, but we are we are biased toward TOD and creating affordability along quality transit, whether that's metro or bus rapid transit. So we do definitely have a bias toward acquisitions along those routes. In addition, our social impact strategy, we don't really say resident services. Again, we serve mixed income communities. So we have everyone from low income to market rate, and we think about what are the services, what are the amenities, what are the things, what are the conditions that we want to create in our environment. That includes inclusive property management, that includes community building and placemaking, And there's an intentionality around how we promote residents engaging with one another. We look for resident leaders. We look at promoting resident-led events. It's a co-creation model. So we don't do for, we do with residents. And that's a paradigm shift in the industry that we're one of the leaders. And creating human capacity and wealth building. And that really is at the heart of the economic mobility piece. Because we are mixed income communities, we don't have the housing cliff. So we want people to be able to save and better themselves and really think about what are the supports and structures necessary to promote economic mobility, whether that's through educational attainment, whether that's through thinking about home ownership, whether that's thinking about how can one build wealth individually and or for his or her or their family. So we actively are engaged in a number of strategies that do that. Moving right along, we have 4 properties, one in Virginia, Crystal Houses, that's 825 units. We acquired that. That's our first property. We acquired that in December of 2020. We did that through a partnership with Amazon. We were one of Amazon's marquee investments in their housing equity fund. They have since made multiple investments in Northern Virginia. We were one of the first. And we're also one of the more robust investments in that it wasn't just financing that they provided to the Conservancy, but also a philanthropic donation around our social impact strategy work, so we could advance the work. The portfolio now stands at 4, and it's growing. We have over 1,400 units in the DMV. We do actively look at Virginia. Virginia is a tough market for a couple of reasons. One, there's not a right of first refusal, meaning Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and the district actually all have right of first refusal. That would require a state legislation change in Virginia, which, I don't know if anyone's advocating on that, but that's something to think about in terms of how do you preserve naturally occurring affordable housing or your market rate affordable housing in Virginia. Virginia loses more than its share of this market rate affordable because the government doesn't have as many tools at its disposal to intervene. The right of first refusal simply is, it's a powerful tool that enables a county or city or municipality to step in to a real estate transaction and actually assign its rights to a pre-qualified list of not-for-profit developers that are ready to provide affordability covenants on the property. So that's what we do. We buy market rate buildings where there is no guaranteed affordability, meaning there's no subsidy, and we voluntarily put affordability covenants on the property. Crystal House has a 99-year affordability covenant on it. 75% of that building will be made affordable over 5 years. We're in year 2 of a 5-year transition of affordability at that building. It is ironclad. It is built into the financing and legal documents. It will outlive me, and it's tied to the land, not to the organization. So that 99 years will remain. That's highly unusual to see an affordable housing deal for that length of time. Pretty extraordinary in terms of the opportunity that we were able to be a part of with Crystal House. Moving into the social impact implementation and what it looks like on the ground. Simply, I talked about the 4 key strategies, but you can really distill it down to 3 key words, and that's connection, aspiration, and voice. We really think about how we're transforming our approach to property management. We think about establishing an aspirational narrative about the people and the community in which we work. And we all are about positioning residents as the stewards of change. We believe that residents have a set of skills. We look to deploy those skills and those energies to shape the life that should shape community life at our buildings. We've done a number of engagements. We do like I know folks who are old enough to remember Humans of New York. It's a photo exhibit about really highlighting that we have more in common than we have different. We did a Humans of Crystal House where we highlighted residents and property management staff. That was something that we started last year. It's been highly successful. We also do resident-led events. And we also think about, again, on the human capacity and wealth building, a couple of demonstrative things that we do there. We do community asset mapping that looks at the training centers, daycares, centers, not-for-profit organizations that are in an area to try to connect residents to those services. We also have partnered with Asizu, which is a company that basically residents can improve and build credit just through their regular on-time rent payments. It's a platform that allows a resident to build their credit or improve their credit score through the use of on-time rental payments. For us, we've chosen to use this platform, and it's a do no harm. So if a resident is behind in rent, they are not penalized, and it doesn't impact them adversely. Asisu, spelled ESUSU, is a national organization. It started here in Virginia. We were one of the first organizations to use it. It's not proprietary to the Washington Housing Conservancy. Other not-for-profit organizations and rental organizations are starting to tap this. And it's a powerful way to help residents build their credit, because many are on the path to home ownership, and having a good credit score is key to that. I'm going to pause there and end there because the rest are sort of images, which I clearly can't show. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. So you asked early on why you were brought in, and I see he's raised his hand. Chris Wimbush was the spearhead behind this this presentation, and I'm glad he did, because I've very much enjoyed learning about all the details associated with the program that you're running, and it's the sort of thing that we'd like to see multiplied throughout Arlington, and so that's why we're speaking with you here today. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you. I'm sure you've got plenty of things to ask or comment on.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I was, I previously lived in Crystal City and was on the Crystal City Civic Association. And so I remember very early on when you in your organization were in the process of making the purchase, hearing about it and really being fascinated by the resident support components. And so it's super exciting to hear. And ultimately, later this evening, we've been working on, some subcommittee meetings focused on the housing choice voucher program. And one of the things we heard in that process was, how can we build better partnerships between residents and landlords? And so that's really what understanding how that effort was going. I know JBG Smith is managing the property, and
they're our property manager at Crystal House. Mm-hmm.
And I know that they were excited to be part of that effort with you all. My question is, how do you think about what types of services or what types of connections will make an impact on residents? How do you decide what to try and what kind of support to build, and what are your criteria? What are some of we've already talked about a bunch, but how do you think about what will make a difference for residents, and thus is worth the effort to sort of build those wraparound services that you described?
Well, we have like a broad framework, and it is based on those 4 key strategies around inclusive property management. So all of our properties will have these 4 strategies: inclusive property management, placemaking, which is really around the built environment and making sure that there's a strong sense of belonging in rental apartment communities, because sometimes that's not present. And it's as simple as colors, like the paint, or what's on the wall, what signals that you're home. I have a expertise in placemaking from my career. The community building is really around the resident to resident engagement, and really thinking about how residents are connecting to one another. We do try really hard to make sure that anything that we do, it's not exclusive, and people aren't, if you get the same group of people together, we're always looking about like the gateway experiences that invite new residents or residents that haven't been part of our programming into the mix. So we try to meet people where they are. So we use Instagram. It's not just sort of in-person meetings. So you can read about what we're doing. I have to say, I didn't realize that one of my consultants, one of their had a friend that's actually living in Crystal House, and met that person yesterday at an event. And I'm like, I've noticed a big difference, like since y'all have taken over the ownership, it's just a different feel. There's a different vibe. Like we want people to know, like when you're in a WHC community, like it's about a feeling. It's behind what we're doing. And it's one person is certainly not, scientifically significant, but it was very encouraging to hear that she noticed. And I don't think this person actually particularly partakes in the events, which is okay. And we want to make sure that we're not being, it's not heavy-handed. It's about creating a compelling invitation to be part of communities should you choose. We know from data from COVID that people suffered a high degree of isolation, and they are actually looking to connect. We know that people are working from home more and more. And like, how are we thinking about the new reality and which we're living in? And so in terms of your question specifically, it's the 4 key strategies at a baseline. And then, whatever else we do, it's driven by input from the residents themselves. And, we don't have an infinite, number of resources. So we think of ourselves as connectors. If there's something that we can't do, then, we have social impact managers. We created a position that we don't think existed in the field. You know them as resident services managers or resident service coordinators. And we just didn't think that was the title, that was not the complete charge of what we're doing here. And so we've done we've connected small business vendors. We've brought them to our property in Crystal City. We highlight the diversity in the building and like what's going on in the community. But the small vendor business, that's actually kind of taken off. Now it's like a thing where we connect residents with small business vendors that are in Arlington. We actually bring them on site, one day a month, and making sure that we're connecting, support local. So those are like different types of things. We also work with Urban Alliance, which is a national, they operate in DC, Detroit, and Chicago, I think, but we're helping young folks think about pathways, career pathways, and property management is one of them. So we're hosting interns from our properties to expose them to careers, livable wage jobs that don't require a high school diploma. So we bring some of our networks to bear in terms of what we expose residents to. Now, again, the customization, we can't do this, unit by unit. There has to be a critical sort of mass support, and we do that through surveying. So, our intel is through our interactions and how, we get information from our in-person events and online, but also we're surveying our residents. We have a very robust program eval component to what we're doing.
That's fantastic, and excellent to hear. I will stop here to make sure we get you out on a good time and for my colleagues. But I think you are all, creating a model for inclusive inclusive property management that, both for market and non-market rental apartments. I live in an apartment and folks that are taking that time and putting in the effort to build community, I think is extraordinarily important. So I thank you very much for being with us this evening and for all of your work.
Thank you for suggesting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really loved the presentation, and I particularly liked seeing your face light up when you were talking about things you're excited about within the program, and it's a good feeling. A lot of times we're dealing with somber and serious issues here, and it's nice to hear some good positive news that people are taking charge and making communities, making places, like you said. So I really love that. Thank you very much for coming. I don't see any other commissioners with comments for now. So, and we've got a lot more to get into tonight. So we'll let you go get your bite to eat, and we'll hope to coordinate with you in the future.
All right. Thank you for having me. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the CAF property oversight, tenant supports, and the TLC's role in that. I was able to get a preview of this from Jennifer and Rolda earlier. I think that was a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I don't know. Time is meaningless to me at this point, but it was excellent, and I'm really excited for the rest of you to see this presentation, and I'll let you take it away, Jennifer.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jennifer Daniels with the Housing Division. And Hector, can you go ahead and share the presentation? I know Rolda had sent out a link to the whole document, so it's for your reading pleasure. It's a 30 some odd page document, so I'm going to try to just kind of go through it quickly. Can you do the presentation? Here we go. Thank you. So as David said, the purpose of this presentation is to share the county's recommendations on, it's a very long title, long-term strategies for improved oversight and tenant support at aging CAF properties. Next slide, please. As you're aware, the document and the conversation stems out of the 2021 Serrano response and months of work to think through how we can, within our county role, strengthen our oversight and tenant supports going forward. So the document contains background on challenges, lessons, long-term recommendations, and the point is to inform a more proactive long-term approach on the county's end, and also ways that we can coordinate better with other sort of, excuse me, stakeholders in the housing ecosystem. Next slide, please. So to get to this point, since late 2020, actually, staff has engaged in in-depth discussions. We've gone to public meetings, smaller group conversations about issues, challenges, and potential improvements. We met with, advocates, with residents, with landlords, with property managers, with county leadership, and we carefully considered every suggestion and incorporated what we could when it was feasible and appropriate. Understanding that additional resources will often be necessary to implement them. So this is like the aspirational goals. Many of the stakeholder conversations focused on clarifying roles and responsibilities. So some of the questions we asked of ourselves and of others were, what is the role of county agencies and other stakeholders in ensuring safe and well-maintained housing? What enforcement authority does the county have and not have? Which is almost more important, and which departments are responsible for which aspects of enforcement. Whose responsibility is it to address issues in individual apartment units, at apartment complexes, and in the community as a whole? How can renters get issues addressed if their landlord doesn't respond or the response isn't adequate? So we talked about a lot of those kind of conversations, and we also focused extensively on improving communication and coordination, understanding that that was an important issue. Next slide, please. So many actions were taken immediately, with several actually completed in FY 2022. We did do expanded inspections. The county's housing team worked with a third-party contractor to inspect approximately 1,200 units of aging committed affordable units. Those were selected based on age, pre-pandemic condition, and resident community feedback. So those have been completed. We're happy to report. On CAF resident outreach and support, as part of the commitment to better listen and engage with residents, county staff and leadership met with residents, community advocates, again, property managers, for in-depth discussions on concerns and potential solutions, so we could understand what supports would be most helpful and learn how to best engage with residents. Another short-term thing was strengthening capital investment, and the county has already implemented several strategies to ensure appropriate capital investment in our CAF communities. We have strengthened the requirements in loan documents for additional oversight language, strengthened requirements for inspections and compliance. Staff is also planning for improvements in maintenance needs. We're ensuring future rehabilitation and renovation scopes of work address major infrastructure and systems issues. And this will include having third-party architects review units and common areas before county board consideration of new loans. We are also developing plans to invest in ongoing capital needs. So for projects that don't require rehabilitation at the time of acquisition, the county is requiring that the owner conduct a property needs assessment or commit to when a property needs assessment must be completed by the loan agreement. So that's some of the things we did around strengthening the sort of capital investment. Another immediate thing was to streamline online resources, and this is still in progress, but we're working on making tenant and landlord information and resources more user-friendly and easy to find on the county website. So those are all things that are in process or completed by this year. Next slide, please. So there were 5 long-term areas of opportunity that were developed with 17 separate strategies. So we'll go through each of them in some detail. I'll try to be relatively quick, but feel free to ask questions after. Next slide, please. So the first long-term area of opportunity was oversight and asset management. So we talked about this. The county's oversight of affordable housing, really, our goal was to strengthen it to ensure that property owners and managers are providing safe and high-quality living environments for residents and are meeting residents' expectations. So we had a series of strategies around that. One, improve the county's oversight framework, and I talked about this some. We're also looking at compliance policies, procedures, and practices. So potential improvements could be around enhancing housing quality standard inspections, clarifying how HQS items should be reviewed. For CAF units, we're going to be doing more spot inspections at unit turnover, so those kinds of things. The second strategy is to identify the resources needed to ensure adequate oversight. So that's making sure that the inspection resources are available. There's limited county staff who are available for inspections, and because of COVID, in-person inspections were not able to occur. So we really want to make sure that we have the resources moving forward. Third, conduct capital needs assessments to estimate future costs of maintenance and repairs. I mentioned that already. Fourth, research models for investing in capital needs. So we're researching how other jurisdictions pay for and finance their capital and conducting some analysis about whether similar options are appropriate for and available for properties in Arlington. And then the fifth strategy under oversight and asset management is to review the code enforcement approach. The way that the county currently approaches code enforcement, as you all know, is to use a complaint-based model. So unless somebody calls, code enforcement can't come. And for rental units, this means that inspectors are unable to inspect units unless a complaint is filed specifically by the resident. So for us to move to a more proactive model would require review of state enabling legislation and potentially significantly more resources if we wanted to move to more of a proactive model. Next slide, please. Capital investment, I talked about, that some of the county's housing stock is older and may need additional resources. So we do want to make sure that we're aware of what those needs are. So we're currently using loan agreements to document requirements related to property conditions. As I mentioned, we strengthen that. We're also exploring site plans or other tools to document these requirements as an alternative enforcement strategy. So trying to build in some more enforcement strategies. Next slide, please. Coordination is the next area of opportunity. Multiple county agencies have roles in supporting CAF properties. And something that we definitely learned from this Toronto is that the county needs to develop a more systematic and coordinated process to inform interagency response. Different agencies may be working on different things and may not be coordinating. So our strategies behind that are, one, to strengthen interdepartmental coordination. So we have created an interdepartmental housing coordination team that includes the manager's office, CPHD, which is us, housing, also inspection services division, Department of DHS, Human Rights Office, Police Department, other relevant departments to meet regularly and share issues, solutions. So we're hoping that'll help us to coordinate more closely. We're also looking to evaluate our staffing approach. So to consider the potential for matrix staffing or other organizational model that enables more coordination, and to better link proactive education and outreach, again, with reactive code enforcement. Third, we're looking to evaluate use and deployment of relationship management systems. So if you buy anything from Amazon, you click on one thing and suddenly, Facebook and everybody knows all these things about you. We're not hoping to do that, but we are hoping to use some of our systems so that you can track constituents' issues to sort of facilitate coordinated and seamless problem solving. So if a resident calls Department of Human Services, for example, with an issue and there's a housing solution that potentially we could help with or the manager's office could help with, then we could kind of coordinate and track and make sure that constituent's issue is addressed. Finally, we are looking to streamline the customer experience. So consider opportunities for a central portal or office that can address resident concerns. We have several ways that people can call. Our understanding is either people haven't felt comfortable, they don't know the number, or again, it doesn't necessarily coordinate responses. So we're looking at sort of a more centralized way to do that. Next slide, please. So the next area of opportunity we called problem solving. So that was really, if issues arise, what are the additional tools and resources that staff may need to help solve resident concerns? So this could be state or local laws or regulations. It could be internal organizational structure or other issues that impede staff's ability to address concerns. So the strategies that we built around that are, number one, support the strategies developed by the Joint Subcommittee. So this is you all. As you know, the Housing Commission, Tenant-Landlord Commission has a joint subcommittee that is working on a report also looking at aging CAF properties. So our hope is that when the report is released, we'll be able to support what those strategies are. The second strategy is to expand third-party conflict resolution. As we know, external conflict resolution sometimes is a better way to go because maybe the county doesn't have the authority to address something, or somebody might not want to go to an attorney, or for lots of reasons, we think that there needs to be stronger conflict resolution. So we're looking at either restructuring our current tenant services contract or looking for other resources to sort of expand that capacity in the county. Third strategy is to require owners to provide tenant supports. What that is we are going to explore adding provisions to county loan agreements that require property owners to establish and support resident tenant councils within that property for some period of time. So that's something that we're going to look at some way that they can help support that. Fourth, again, directly addresses you all, strengthen role of Tenant-Landlord Commission in dispute resolution. You all just gave great examples of when people come with issues, being able to provide information and resources. So we want to continue to promote you all as a forum and also look at, are there other models? I think other jurisdictions, like the city of Alexandria, they have a subset of their tenant-landlord commission that's actually a voluntary arbitration board. So it's trained members of their commission. Landlords and tenants can go to them and come up with some sort of agreement. So that's a potential model. Are there other models that would be effective in helping people to conciliate grievances in a way that the Tenant-Landlord Commission could help? And part of this strategy, I think, will be providing both technical and non-technical training to commissioners. So that could be on Virginia Residential Landlord Tenant Act. It could be on fair housing, whatever the technical training would seem to be, and also on non-technical, so on conflict resolution, meeting facilitation, those kinds of things. The fifth strategy is to train staff to better handle tenant communications. So again, we're looking at staff who touch residential issues, who interact with tenants throughout the county, doing better training both in technical areas. So again, Virginia Residential Landlord Tenant Act, fair housing, other technical issues, but also in the sort of softer skills of customer service, customer experience, cultural competency, those kinds of things. And then sixth is create an alternative dispute resolution option. And this kind of feeds into the conflict resolution one I talked about before. We'd like to identify options of community collaboration for improving relationships and empowering conflict resolution that does not require, or county is not able to do, enforcement or policing. So such a program could provide mediation services through an outside vendor, through, some other resource. So we are hoping to sort of think through what that could look like to provide additional support for that. And then the fifth strategy is communication and outreach. So again, understanding that county agencies should coordinate and streamline information. So it's easy to find and clear about what roles and responsibilities are, where to find other resources. So we have two strategies under that. One is to do targeted education and outreach. So we're looking to develop, we have lots and lots of materials. If you've been on our website, if you've been to any of our events, we have many brochures, many, pages on our website. We actually have tons of stuff. It's hard to find. It may not be, culturally competent. It may be hard to access. So we're trying to make it more easy to understand, more user friendly. So we're thinking about, short videos, refrigerator magnets, one page sort of documents that are friendly, and develop a network and ways to distribute them better. And then the second strategy is to provide feedback opportunities. So the initial thought was to create a periodic anonymous survey of CAF residents across the portfolio. In conversations with residents and stakeholders, we're sort of rethinking that. Our understanding is that maybe would not be the most effective way to get feedback. So we're looking at working with a vendor to do maybe some targeted outreach, some sorts of focus groups, similar to how we did the expanded inspection push this year. Do something similar next year for learning about CAF residents, what their experiences are, what their challenges are, just so that the county can kind of get a better sense of how it's working across the portfolio. So I'm done talking for now. If you have questions, we can go through them. And then I was hoping to talk a little bit about some of the tasks that I think I mentioned are specific to the Tenant-Landlord Commission. Or should I keep going? Wait, I see a hand. Sorry. Let me...
No, let's do a quick round of questions, and Chris, you can go first.
Sure. I have a background as a consultant, and thus I sort of think a lot about the problem statement. And so every one of the recommendations and areas of interest that you described today make a ton of sense for a variety of reasons. But I'm curious, ultimately, like if you were to start, and I realize there's a broader report, but if you could briefly summarize what problems coming out of the Serrano are you trying to solve for with the set of recommendations that you overviewed today? If there's a 2 or 3 sentence, and I know that's artificial, problem statement, just so we can contextualize all of the recommendations together. Or all of the action items.
But no pressure. I think what I had mentioned at the beginning was the 2 sort of major goals were coming out of the Serrano, I think, was to clarify roles and responsibilities. There's a lot of players in the housing ecosystem. The county has responsibility, the landlord, the property manager, the resident, and I think a lot of it is figuring out who can do what, right? And who is able to do what, who's got the authority, and who should do what, who has the responsibility. And then the second piece is the communication and outreach. I think that's really important because, again, if people don't know who to go to, if their concern gets dropped because it didn't get passed along properly, if there's not the right coordination, then we need to address that. And I guess the third thing I would say is community. Helping to build community, because I think part of the issue with the Serrano was residents didn't feel heard, and that isn't, we as a county don't operate affordable housing, but that's something that's important. So I think, building community, finding ways for people to be heard, finding ways to kind of work collaboratively to fix some of the problems that were identified. So that was more than 2 or 3 sentences.
No, I think that was very helpful. I have one quick follow-up, and it's more of a confirmation. Is it fair to say that the primary levers for enforcing, maybe isn't that the right word, but pushing change by property owners is loan covenants, and it sounds like code enforcement. Are there any hard power tools besides those 2 pieces that are available to the county to not force, but to encourage landlords, property owners to make the changes that you are describing?
I can attempt to answer this, and then if Marie, who's our asset management supervisor, wants to jump in, she knows more about this than I do. But I would say, certainly with the CAF properties, some of the enforcement stuff is in the loan documents. We do also do inspections regularly, so we do housing quality standards inspections. We Yeah, Marie, I see you're going on camera, so save me.
No, I think Jennifer summed it up very well. I mean, we do have the loan documents, which have, certain provisions that allow corrections for certain things. At the end of the day, foreclosure is what the big hammer is, which doesn't really, help the residents or, the property manager. So we really try to work a lot of different angles before we would even go there. And I don't know. I don't think there's anything more, but I think Jennifer covered it.
And for loans that are obviously in flight, will the CAF owners have to agree to change the covenants in order to put protective measures in, or are there adequate provisions and the current covenants that will allow you to move some of these items forward?
I would say a pretty decent percentage are already in there, and we do have great language in our covenants, like for that make it vaguer and bigger, or more vague and big, that we should be able to do. We do take the opportunity when property is returned to us to either refinance or something. Even if we don't have any money going out or anything like that, we will have to resubordinate or something like that. And it's at those times that we can always say, hey, as part of the deal, we want to update. I mean, this is we've been doing this for a long time. What we did 15 years ago is very different than what our legal documents look now, just like everybody else's. They've gotten a lot more detailed and a lot more substantial.
Thank you. I appreciate the context.
Thanks for the question, Chris. Elder Basurto, I see you got your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Jennifer. My question goes around, I heard there was a lot of vendors. Are there any plans for county staff to do some of this work directly? That's one. And also concerning the inspections, is there a way that we're checking quality control around inspections and what's actually being done there? I just saw the number 1,200 units. That seems a lot to me.
So I will try to tackle the first one, and then maybe Marie can do the second. Yeah, I mean, county staff is doing a lot of the work. Yeah, I don't know if you have any specific questions. It's, again, like a lot of what we were really thinking about is clarifying roles and responsibilities, and what we can do to help support coordination, collaboration, outreach, making sure that property managers, landlords do what they need to do. So that's, I think our goal is really to make sure that everyone is clear on their roles and we communicate better on what they are. And then Maria, if you want to speak to the inspections part.
Sure. 1,200 was our goal, and we got right under about 1,000. So the third-party inspectors that were brought in, they are certified. They are, they do inspections all over the country. They have a bunch of really large contracts. So we and we also have a couple of folks in housing that are also inspectors. So they did some extensive training with them, just to make sure that we were all on the same page. Some of the inspectors were also bilingual. We had property managers going around with them. And the other thing that has been huge on the number is that we have utilized it's an app. It's an inspection app that basically can, record information, as well as record, like take pictures, take videos. This is what's broken. This is what's not broken. So some of the items that were, some of the deficiencies, a lot of them are pretty normal, what is seen in some of the properties, such as, and I always say this wrong, like the broken GFCIs or GCFIs, I say that wrong. So, they just have to pull those out and put those back in. There might be a handle broken off of something in the kitchen. A lot of times burners are either, pulled out to make room for bigger pots or something like that. So a lot of it is very routine from what they see. So what happens with the re-inspections is the person has the picture, can see it, can go right in, look at that, make sure everything's good, and go. So the app or the software has really, really helped speed up the process. And that was something that was found by our in-house inspector. And we're working through it. It's still, it's not perfect. We're still, trying to just make it as great as possible. But, the inspector will go around with an iPad or a phone and, be able to do something that used to They used to have to handwrite and then go back and do a bunch of reports. So it's really, it's an amazing tool that we're able to use to speed things up.
That's great. Thank you, Marie. The reason I bring this up is because some of the issues that happen in Serrano, as you know, there were many things that were reported that were right, and they ended up not being done correctly at the end. So that's why I'm asking about this. And I saw you guys are working on online resources and streamlining customer service experience. And so I'm just wondering, I know online makes sense, and so does some kind of center, but some of the vulnerable families don't come to the centers, or they won't go online, or they don't know how to navigate that. Do you have any plans for, I saw outreach there too. Is there anything specific for vulnerable families that don't speak the language and removing that barrier of trusting the government?
I mean, that's something that we are thinking about and we work on. I mean, we do outreach, we do workshops. We have a contract with Bugata, who does a lot of the outreach work for us. You know, I mean, we're always looking at ways to do that better. And I think this actually might be a good segue into some of the strategies that we'd like to talk through with you all, because I think one of the ones that we would love help with sort of scoping is the getting feedback from CAF residents. You know, what does that look like? What are some ways that we can, you know, that we can be more accessible? What are some ways, you know, so I think that that could be part of the outreach that we do, that we have a vendor do. What's working for you in the customer experience? What isn't? And what would be most helpful for you? And what kinds of, you know, languages do you need? What kinds of, you know, training do you need? What, you know, just so that would, I think that would be really helpful for us. So I don't know, David, should we segue to that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All righty. So Hector, I don't know if you want to reshare the screen. I put together all the strategies that are sort of specific to the Tenant-Landlord Commission.
Yeah, give me a minute.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, I guess I'll just start talking if I can. I can't see, my font is tiny. So yeah, I listed 5 tasks that we think of we would love help on kind of immediately or quickly, and there's certainly other ones along the way. But the first one was to support the strategies developed by the joint subcommittee, and I know that that report has not been released yet. So David, I don't know if you have anything you want to say about that, or other folks do, or we have any previews or.
I don't think so right now. No,
Okay.
nothing for me.
Okay. So then the next one is to strengthen the role of Tenant-Landlord Commission in dispute resolution. And what we would really like here, as I mentioned a little bit, is helping to research how other commissions or boards handle dispute resolution. Staff has done some research on that. We would love a commissioner who has some energy to help us think about it too. What could be a potential structure for Tenant-Landlord Commission? Or is there a new structure, or is it just some sort of training, or is everything fine the way it is? Or, you know, should there be, I know that the CURAT and the Outreach Committee have done a lot of work on, you know, letting people know that the Tenant-Landlord Commission exists, but maybe there's some other things we should be doing about that. So any assistance thinking through this strategy would be welcomed. Should I keep going, David, or do you want to talk about each?
Please keep going. You know, we are already over time, and I'd like to get to at least the housing discrimination presentation.
Sure.
But I will say, for each of these things, if commissioners are interested in, you know, putting some energy outside of the actual monthly commission meetings on any of these particular topics, please just reach out to me, and we'll make it happen, so that we can, you know, it's tough to do commission work during commission monthly meetings. And so it ends up being the fact that a lot of it gets done outside of it, through the efforts of one or more commissioners. And if you're looking for ways to get involved, I'm saying this in particular because we've got a lot of new members. That's what, yeah, that's how we get started.
I'm interested. I'll just throw that out there. I'm interested.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'll say, I know we have a lot of newer members, and I'm also relatively new, but I'll put myself in the junior category or junior senior category. I think all commissioners should make a commitment to supporting at least one of these initiatives. I'm certainly interested in, in strengthening the role of the Tenant Landlord Commission and being a researcher at will. But I think we should all make, we choose to serve, and I'm sure we will. But I think we should all commissioners should make a commitment to supporting one of these initiatives over the next couple of months, and then I certainly would do my part.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, keep going, Jennifer.
Well, that was such a perfect ending, really. Okay, so again, creating an alternative dispute resolution. This feels anticlimactic. Similarly, helping, I know that there are some commissioners who have already done some research on this. What are some other models we could use? What are some potential? I know there's some vendors. We used to have an in-house mediator, so again, helping us think through what that could look like, what the resources would need to be. Targeted education and outreach. I know there's a group that's already doing some work on that. I met with our comms manager a couple of days ago about starting to think this through, and she said, what would really be helpful is to sort of pull together all the stuff you have, and she can sort of magically help make it user friendly. So I think the help we would love here is to figure out really what are the key things that we want to get out quickly and easily. I mean, there's so much in the weeds stuff around housing, but what are the things that would be helpful for people to get in a postcard or a refrigerator magnet? What are the issues that you all hear about that are really critical that people don't know about? So help us maybe prioritize what some of that messaging should be. And then the final thing is again to provide feedback opportunities. We'd love help scoping out what that would look like. It would be, an expanded reaching out to CAF properties to find out, how can we best reach out to you, and how, what is your resident experience like? What's working? What isn't working? So I'll stop now. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Real quick comment from me. The resources piece, I think, is probably something that our existing publicity and outreach subcommittee should take a look at, and we can talk about that additionally offline. So that's just my top of the mind thought. And as far as dispute resolution stuff goes, I know Nicole Merlin, who's not present unfortunately today, is has been thinking about these types of issues for quite a while now, and we're looking forward to augmenting her research and pushing it across the finish line, I think. Ryan, go ahead.
I'll just say one quick thing, which is, as a landlord, the things that you're talking about here seem very important, especially when it comes to, maintaining a safe environment for tenants and landlord compliance and things like that. If the county can make people, make landlords provide information annually from landlords to tenants for recycling, which is an important priority, I don't understand how they can't, say, hey, you got to put in something annually into, to tenants' hands that says, if you have a problem, sources you can go to. So, I mean, I think that's so maybe obvious or basic. And then, what goes into that communication can be up for further discussion. But I mean, there's some, and then just recently, landlords are now required to include the tenant statement of rights at the, at the state level, right? That you have to give as part of your lease documents. So, I mean, I think a lot of this, especially if it's complaint based, is really educational. And, it's not a big deal. As a landlord, I would not object to having to put one more piece of paper in the move-in packet for my residents, right? I would just hope they read it. So, and there can be educational outreach and stuff like that. But anyway, that seems like low hanging fruit to me.
Yeah, I love that idea. Thank you for suggesting it. I think that is a great direction for us to go in, and let's continue that conversation after the commission meeting ends. Maybe we'll have a call or email. I think unless there were any other comments, I know it's tough because we could probably talk about this for a good chunk of time, but we're now at 8:30, and I really do want to get to Chris and Emily's presentation here on housing discrimination, because they've worked really hard on it, and I'm excited about it. So let's just go there and wrap up once they're done.
Okay, great. I'll try to be quick. A lot of this we sent out today of the report. So I'm just going to quickly walk through that and what our recommendations are going forward. And then would love to hear, if we don't have the time today, any feedback or questions that you all have from what we talk about today. So I'll just share my screen and walk through it. If I share it correctly. So in December, we had our first meeting dedicated to this. So for people who aren't aware, in 2020, Virginia passed a law that protects source of incomes for Virginia fair housing, that landlords cannot discriminate against housing voucher residents when applying for housing. So that is enacted at the state level, and what we really wanted to identify is how has Arlington County responded to that, and what issues have we seen from both the tenant side and the landlord side in following this change. So we had our first, and this report will go into some detail, more detail around the program if you're not familiar with it. We had our first meeting in December where we had a resident who is a voucher holder, and he talked about his experience with trying to find housing. And then we also had another meeting in January with Reginette, who is from the county, where she talked about her experience. She helps potential tenants or potential residents, as we learned today, to use more find housing under the program. So some of the issues that we discussed coming from that is, I'm sure it's no surprise to anyone here that the housing market, like available homes, is a problem, and especially for this tenant who is for a larger family looking for 4 to 5 bedrooms was more difficult. And when they did find housing, there was failed inspections, and either the landlord didn't want to do them, or they couldn't afford to make the changes. So it did take a long time for that resident to be housed. They are housed now, fortunately, and thanks to the help of county staff for supporting that. But that was an issue that they've gone through. And then in general, we're going to hear a lot about that today, is just the outreach education around this change. So finding that realtors, property owners, some landlords aren't aware of the change, adding source of income as a protected class, as well as some of those folks don't understand what the housing voucher program is. They haven't had to work with the county before, and they wouldn't necessarily know the benefits of what working with the county would be like. We met our last month. We had a number of landlord representatives come and talk to us about what issues they're seeing, because they're, based on the change, they are seeing an uptick in applicants. So from their perspective, I think this wasn't a choice for them to be involved in the county, or to make this change. They have expressed that they want to be able to support residents, but have found a lot of difficulties with the program itself and making that efficient for them. So some of those issues that were raised were residents aren't fully informed on how it works. So they assume that if an apartment is available, that means that they can get it. They don't understand the application process and the steps to actually be housed into that apartment. There's still some issues with the inspection process. So county staff has expressed that inspections are done within 15 days, but there's been some back and forth on, sometimes the inspector is out for vacation, or it's harder scheduling, or there isn't communication. The communication could be improved between inspectors and landlords. There's issues between landlords and getting their first payment. If this is a first housing voucher resident, there's significantly delayed on that first check, which can lead to issues with the tenant. And in general, challenging communication between landlords and housing specialists. So there was a few examples where a landlord wasn't aware that they were holding a property for a resident, but the resident had moved elsewhere. When there's changeover in the case manager, people aren't sure who they're supposed to contact at the county. And then there was expressed difficulties tracking down late checks and things like that. And then lastly, one of the other issues discussed with the landlords is that they don't know how much the county will be able to cover until they go through the county goes through the whole process, which can be challenging when trying to figure out if they can be able to house the resident. So they were asking if the county can provide a rough estimate of what they expect. They know that it might change, but that can help landlords a lot with this program. And we also had two meetings dedicated with the housing voucher program staff. So I think Vanessa Street is on here tonight. So she came and talked to us about the program and where it's going. And we had one dedicated to inspections. There's a lot of folks using the housing voucher program and a lot on the wait list. And I know that they are looking to open up the wait list soon. So it is, or in the near future, I should say, but probably better. I think this is a good time to make sure that these processes are as efficient as they can be to help support when we are adding more folks to the wait list. And a big issue, as we know, is just the low rental vacancy rate and trying how can we get more landlord participation in this program to meet the demand, especially with the landlords that don't have as much units that might be harder to reach. How do we make sure that we have those connections for our housing specialists to be able to connect with folks? And they're doing an effort now to make sure that there is a greater focus on the racial equity in the program. And lastly, I know I talked to you a lot, going to our opportunities for improvement are on what we recommend for next steps. So first being to establish a forum with the county staff, member of the county board and landlords to discuss the improvements of the program. I think the landlords from our last meeting had really actionable items that can be improved. So I think that can come out of something positive. Consider a fund for landlords to make repairs, especially for those landlords that have fewer units that would really benefit for having that. Reginette had expressed that there are a few other counties within Virginia that have this. So we can do some more research into figuring out if that's something Arlington County can have. Reviewing the business process and making sure that the process for housing applicants, we can reduce the time needed for processing, making sure, again, as we add more folks, that it is an efficient process. And lastly, reviewing the outreach and education efforts to the county, both to potential residents and the application process, as well as making sure that tenants, landlords, realtors, all parties involved are aware of the source of income protected class. So with that, I will pause. I'll first ask Chris if I missed anything that you wanted to highlight, and I just went through the whole thing quickly.
No, an excellent summary, and appreciate all your work in coordinating months of meetings along with Rhoda. Thank you to you both. I think it's been extraordinarily productive. I think the only thing I'd add is we focused a lot on the process as we dug into it, because ultimately, I think we saw a tremendous amount of commitment from the landlords that we met with and came to speak with us and are extraordinarily passionate about being great landlords for everyone. And I think, but at the same time, there are challenges that landlords are experiencing, using that comparison point of the commercial market. Applications can be processed faster. There's, typically a different, not not mandated inspections at the beginning of a lease, challenges around getting that first check if they're joining the program for the first time. And we also heard from county staff that, especially in our last meeting with tenants, that they also want to sit down and connect with landlords and figure out ways of smoothing the way and making the program more attractive to everyone. So I think there's a ton of energy around improving, the various processes in the program to make it a better deal for everyone. And I think one of our requests of the commission after they've had time to review it would be to repackage or not repackage, but essentially to transmit our report to the county board and to staff, and ask them to take action, particularly in that forum piece. And I already think there's county staff support for getting a group of landlords together and thinking through where there's some challenges. But I just appreciate folks that are on this call and folks that were able to come to our sessions in the past, to thank them for working with us and helping us understand the program, because that's really what we want to understand the program, and we want to understand, given the sources of funds protected class, which basically makes the housing choice voucher program mandatory for landlords. How can we make it a good experience for everyone?
Yeah, thank you, Chris and Emily. I've been delighted to watch the two of you and staff and everyone come together and work on this over the last I guess six to 8 months or so. And I really appreciate the effort, and I'm so glad that we've reached sort of the stage where we're looking at actionable process changes. So I see that Nicole Harmon has her hand raised. We'll have just like a very brief discussion, and I think my inclination is to put this to a vote at the next TLC meeting, given the timing of the report here, and that will allow everybody time to review and digest, and we'll be able to have a short discussion as well at the next TLC meeting. So Nicole, why don't you go ahead and give your comments, and then we'll talk a little bit further.
Yes, hi. Trying to lower my hand. Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Harmon. I'm the Housing Assistance Director over at the Department of Human Services within the Housing Assistance Bureau. And Housing Choice Voucher is one of our rental subsidy programs that operates within my bureau. So I 100% support and welcome this study. And then Vanessa Street is also on the call today. And I'm thankful that she's had the opportunity to come to the subcommittee to discuss the program. Having just kind of seen the report today, I would, also welcome the opportunity to have maybe further discussion in how we refine some of the recommendations, particularly around application process and really understanding, at which points of the program are these bottlenecks and where are their challenges. I think it's important that we weigh where there's HUD regulatory requirements versus what we can actually, improve and change upon ourselves. So I'm hoping that we'd have the opportunity to kind of refine some of the recommendation areas. And I'm interested in hearing more about the landlords, who's also presented during the subcommittee as well. So.
No, absolutely. And I'd say that, we, and the report talks about this, it was from, purely from the perspective of the commissioners on the subcommittee. And ultimately, it's not a scientific report. We understand that we're only hearing the perspectives of individuals who came. And so I think that's why the forum piece is so important, because at the end of the day, the landlords who joined us at a previous meeting, I think, some of what they have asked for, or some of what they've talked about maybe can't be addressed given the concerns. The inspection process is a HUD mandated inspection process. There's not, and we learned that when we heard from the inspection staff, and those regulations are in place for very good reason. And so ultimately, I think more than anything, having that forum of folks coming together, and as you said, there are trade-offs and there are things that can't change and can change. I think a good example of a process challenge that Emily mentioned is around understanding, I think, the value of the voucher after inspection and what is reasonableness. I think the landlords understand that that's an important part of the process, but ultimately it's challenging for them to sort of understand what's going to happen to them without knowing what might be the value of the voucher. And they don't need it in, black and white, but an estimate. And so I think that's an example where, ultimately, it gives them more peace of mind, and there are landlords on the call, so I won't go too far. But more than anything, I think for the subcommittee, we're excited to sort of get out of the way, so that that dialogue, and we also know that you engage with tenants who are participating in the landlords that are participating in the program. But there was a ton of energy from the tenants. I keep saying that, from landlords in the last meeting around this issue, and I'm sure they'd be really excited to sit down and really talk through it. And I know Vanessa, or at least Rhoda, with the landlords, said that would be something that would be super valuable that the county staff would be interested in as well. But thank you so much for being here tonight. It really means a lot to us.
Yeah, and it's good to see you, Nicole. It's been a little while since you've been to the TLC, but I remember you from the good old days back when we met in person. You were at almost every meeting. Hopefully we can get you back more often.
Absolutely. Reginette is on much needed vacation, so she's kind of taken my seat, but this feels like great old times for me to be back. So
including us going well over the scheduled time. I've typically avoided that during my tenure as chair. Unfortunately, we had very important things to take care of during this meeting, and I appreciate everyone's patience. So with that, I think I'm going to ask for a motion to conclude the meeting, unless there are any other comments or questions. All right, and hearing none and waiting for the space of about half a second, I'd like to ask for that motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, excellent. That'll conclude the May 11th, 2022 meeting for the Tenant-Landlord Commission, and we'll look forward to seeing you all at the next one. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.